Welcome to Gen 365 podcast. This is an initiative of Beyond the Veil Mission. And this is a podcast for the community to empower a generation of healing and hope 365 days of the year. Before we begin, I want to remind you the meaning of humanity or Ubuntu. I am because you are. I am because we are. Therefore, to create a safe and brave space for all of us, we must remember that my healing is as good as my community healing. This is a podcast for everyone who loves the community. If you are listening to this new episode, I want you to remember that we see you and you matter. Welcome. Welcome to Gen 365 family, to our best listeners. Thank you so much again for connecting with us. This is our second episode on series of finding hope across cultures. Recently, we had a guest who really inspired us with beautiful words. He said something like, hope has no cultural boundaries, and emotions have no cultural boundaries. And I thought that was something very powerful. And I think he spoke our heart on what we thought about, starting this series of finding hope across cultures. So I will reveal our next guest very soon. But as I promised, I am going to start with a short story. And as I told you, I'm not going to mention the name until the end. You're going to be trying to guess who is that person. So here's today's story. So this is an inspiring story of a Pakistani activist for female education and the youngest Nobel Prize laureate. She was born in 1997 in Swat Valley, where the Taliban had a strong presence and had banned girls from going to school. Despite the danger, this girl's father, who himself was an advocate for education and social justice, encouraged her to speak out and fight for her right to an education. So this young girl began blogging for BBC about life under the Taliban and her desire to go to school. And as I'm telling this story, you might have gone through different things. I really want you to be inspired by this girl's story. So her activism gained the international attention, and she became a symbol of hope for girls around the world who also face barriers to education. However, the Taliban saw this girl as a threat, and on October 9, 2012, when she was just 15 years old, she was shot in the head while on her way home from school. Miraculously, she survived the attack and was airlifted to a hospital in UK for treatment. I hope you have started to figure out who is this girl, and her story gained even more attention, and she became a global icon for education and peace. And after this girl recovered from her injuries, she continued her activism and founded a fund to raise awareness and fund for girls' education around the world. She has traveled to many countries, speaking to world leaders and advocating for education for all. So this girl has inspired millions of people and has led to the creation of programs aimed at improving access to education for girls. So this girl's name is Malala Yousafzai, and she is a powerful example of resilience and determination to the human spirit. And remember, despite facing incredible adversity, she never gave up on her dreams. She continued to fight for what she believed in. Her story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope, and that one person can make a difference. So, Malala, if you ever come across our podcast, I know that you have inspired many people, including our podcast, myself, Lydia as the guest. And if you heard this story, you have dreams, you are going through something, just remember that there's always hope. Never give up on your dreams. So from this story, I'm going to welcome someone special. We met a few years ago in Texas. I've been on her podcast. We've been friends, social media friends, full time for a while. And Kelly Brown, please help me to pronounce your name because we respect really ways that people, the last name, please help me to pronounce it.
My last name is Archibald.
Archibald, I knew how, I was like, I want to make sure. I was like, okay, this is the way about, I want to make sure. So she's the president of Speak Volumes Inc. and the creator and host of Qavah the podcast. She is married with 3 young adult children, and she is dedicated to share stories of hope. So now you know why we invited her, because her podcast, it's actually about sharing stories of hope. And I remember we had our podcast together a few years ago. And thank you so much for that opportunity, because I was going through so much grieving, and I think that was a good platform for me to use my voice to release my emotions. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. You really were one of the guests that made a huge imprint on my heart. And I remember when you were speaking at the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. And I didn't know why I went that day. And my husband couldn't go. And I was like, why in the world am I going to this? And you started speaking, and literally it was like God going, she is why you're here. And I remember, and there were all those people there. It was so crowded. And I remember walking up to you and asking you if you would be interested in being on a podcast. And you were so sweet. And you were probably one of the first people I asked that I did not know. And I mean, anyway, I was like, okay, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to ask her if she'll do it. And you were so, so very sweet. And your story really made an impression on me. You're one of my favorite guests I've ever had. And I love your heart for people, and wanting to offer hope to people going through difficult situations. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I actually love how you really shared these stories on your podcast, because we get to hear a story from someone and really how they overcame. And I don't necessarily use overcame. I think even the courage. I think it's hearing the courage of these people sharing their stories. So thank you for that platform. So Kelly, I did introduce you, and I believe that's 1% of who you are. And I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you wish people knew about you?
I thought about this. Of course, I'm kind of silly. And so I thought, this is okay. I am from Tennessee, so Dolly Parton is but here's the thing: I don't color my hair, so that's about.
Wow!
Isn't that crazy? What do you want? I know, isn't that crazy? The Lord has been kind to me, because I would have roots, because I am very low maintenance. But anyway, so I was like,
wow,
that's about
okay. You always have beautiful, good looking hair. So
I only get my hair cut like twice a year, and I just got it cut. So I get it cut.
Oh my God.
Fall, and that's about it. So, so that's about, I don't know what else I want people to know about me. I'm pretty much an open book. There's not a lot that is very mysterious or secretive. That's about the only thing that people probably don't know about me, is that I don't color my hair.
Wow. So, that is, you all go check her page. She has, some beautiful hair. I'm like, your hair is always done. It's always done. So Yeah, but that's a gift. That's a gift. We all have different gifts, and
Yes. Yes. It is a
God,
gift.
God
That's,
has saved you a lot of time and a lot of money.
oh, hello. I'm just so grateful. So that's,
Yeah.
I don't have anything real serious though. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna tempt you again. Tell
Okay.
me
Okay.
5 words to
Okay.
describe Kelly Brown Archibald. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So,
Thank you.
I'm a wife and a mom, obviously. I am curious. That is probably the one attribute that I have that propels me more than any other attribute. I really am interested, in things that, are new. I'm interested in people. I'm curious about people. I care about people. I care about the overarching well-being of mankind, not
Hmm.
and as well as individuals. I am rooted, and that is through just a long journey of life, and
Hmm.
the Lord showing up and revealing that He is my hope.
Hmm.
Um, and let's see, I have attention deficit. I am
Hmm.
a deficit. However, I
You,
see that as a good thing.
it's a
So,
good thing, and I think many of us, honestly, it's yeah, it comes with gifts. It comes with gifts.
yes, I couldn't manage all the things that I manage if I weren't. So, those are 5 things about me. So that's it.
Wow, thank you so much, especially our podcast Gen 365. Jen, this is a generation of hope. So, even yourself sharing a piece of yourself, that, you know, you have attention deficit challenges, but then this is your gift as well. You can manage. I don't think you could have managed things you do without that. That's something
Right.
to inspire hope to our listeners, because most of the time we label these challenges with inability to perform like anybody else, but all of our flaws come with gifts. Um, even healing, listening the story of Malala, and we said last week, those beautiful stories, were birthed out of tragedies, out of challenging times, and until now we are learning from them, being inspired. So thank you so much. So speaking about hope across cultures, we want to know, how would you define your cultural background, and how has it influenced your understanding and experience of hope?
So I was born in Memphis, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born probably not long after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of racial tension in the city. My family, however, lived in the suburbs. We lived in a little town called Ellendale, which does not really exist anymore. But we lived in the country. We had horses, and I went to school, and there was all the racial tension that was going on in the city. We out in this little country rural setting, we didn't have that. My best friend was African American, and her name was Debbie, and I loved her. And so it's interesting to be in, and it's probably not too different than it is today, as far as, there's a lot of racial tension sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the interpersonal relationships that we had at school, we were all very united and loved each other. And we were country. We were not, we were probably lower socioeconomic. We,
Mm-hmm.
more, I don't know, we were just country people. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had, for field day, we brought frogs, and we had a frog jumping contest. We were country. We rode our horses all day and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And so, as far as like, I saw, there was kindness in everyone. And so
Yes.
in just exhibiting, practicing kindness and respect and just civility. In the school, there was that over, and my favorite teacher was African American. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Her name was Miss Marva Johnson. And
Wow.
if you're out there, Miss Marva Johnson, I thought you were so beautiful. But I remember she used to wear scarves and she was so fancy. But there was not that from a child's perspective. None of that bled over onto me, whatever was going on in the big city, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, as far as like how that exhibits hope, it makes me very hopeful because I believe my experience was not unique.
Yes.
Everyone in my school experienced the same thing. And we loved each other. We truly did care for one another. And so I think that for our country, and your country, I think that offers a lot of hope in seeing that there's not a lot of lines. We're learning the same things, like we're in school together. We're learning math. And I literally remember, all the things I learned in the third grade from Miss Johnson about, zoology and going to the zoo and all of the, it's just, there's hope in education. There's hope and I think education offers a lot to the community and giving us the same experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like what I'm hearing is that, growing up from the countryside, your community, showing kindness to everyone, being taught by teachers from a diverse community, instilled kindness in you from the young age.
Right.
In those aspects really gave you hope in ways you see the world. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. And so, and not seeing differences necessarily. Obviously there's beauty in each person and
absolutely. I always tell people I do not support sameness. I do not support the concept of sameness because I think we are so different. The problem is we do not respect or we do not respect or support our differences.
Right.
Even when you look outside, the forest looks green, but the trees are different. Absolutely. Even as a human being, I remember growing up, I often tell people, but it's very difficult because of the history and everything that speak the reality. But when you speak to many young children, asking you your culture background, your roots, it's like, our imagination, we are always looking for a kindness, hopeful world until later on they are telling us, this is who you are. I remember coming from Rwanda to Canada. For me, I was Rwandan. When I got here, you are Black. You are Black. You are African diaspora. It's like now I had to learn all those identity and what it meant to be those identity.
Right.
So it's like, those things, what I can hear from you, it's like, many people come from, we cannot dismiss that it can be different from some communities, but many people come from were raised out of kindness to see others with kindness and hope. But then there is also the pressure that we meet as we grow up.
Right. And there is just, being human. We are all humans and we're just trying to get along. I mean, we're just trying to walk this path that we've been given. And so I think seeing things just as humans and, Miss Johnson was beautiful. And then, I had other teachers, that weren't, and so there's just that, I don't know, an enlightenment that we, as a child, I got to see, just civility and and such beauty in people interacting together in a wonderful way. So I'm
Yes.
very grateful for that. So thank you for
Thank
asking.
you. Thank you. Yeah. And speaking about your family and or community cultural traditions or beliefs, how did that shape your understanding of hope? And how do you think this perspective differs from other cultures' perspectives of hope? Because I think although hope can be universal, but also there was ways. For example, the guest we had last time, it was like, he's a Black adoptee who was raised by a beautiful white family who loved him. But then when he started growing up, he wanted to know more. He wanted to know about, his roots, where he come from. And then one thing that really really captured me was the music in the Black community, how he speak. And I was like, that was like his way. So about you, what are the ways, like, in your cultural background, family, community, what is your understanding of hope, and how those perspectives differ from other cultural perspectives on hope?
Well, I think of, for me personally, in my family of origin specifically, I think of the song that says, "My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness."
Men.
And so when I was a little girl, probably I was about 6 years old, maybe. I remember that my father he became a believer, and we really didn't go to church before then. We probably went on special occasions, but I remember watching my dad be baptized, and there was a real shift in our family when that happened. And so we started going to church and became very active in church. And then we moved to Texas and still went to church, and we started a mission church, and which was there were 7 families that started this mission. And now it's a mega church. I think they have 16,000 people every Sunday morning that attend. And so it went from 7 families to very, very big. So that is actually where I met my husband, at the mission church. His father had just been murdered by his stepmother, and he was living with his aunt.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, that's on the podcast.
Wow.
His story. But he and his brother walked over to help me fold bulletins. And that, things happen in life that you think you don't realize it's any big deal. These are just 2 boys that I thought were funny that helped me fold bulletins. Little did I know that we would become family later on. But, they were in a situation which they were in a safe, loving situation at that point. However, the baggage of, the emotional cost of all that had happened in their lives was there. But community was what offered hope. And so we were just this little bitty church, very few people, but we did everything together. We ate together. We, went on trips together, all the things. And so that, for them, that safety and that acceptance and that love really made a huge difference in their lives. Now, I didn't come from that background at all. However, I am a recipient of all the goodness because they were good to, who became my husband. So I think that the hope that was given through all of that experience of just really the goodness of God in leading us places and weaving our lives together with people that were loving and nurturing and forgiving and gracious and kind. And so I think that the hope that was offered through really people who loved Jesus, basically, and they were, his hands and feet to us.
Mm-hmm.
So that offered a great deal of hope for us, and the hope for the traditions that we've been given as far as, our families and, just traditions of eating together on special occasions and, all the things that we do as a family that are rooted in, biblical, principles and biblical traditions that we, that help give us hope and root us into something that is greater than we are.
Yes. So you would say that your hope, that you experience up to now is more rooted, I would say, in a spiritual background, in Christian faith.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So, that's a lot to take in, but thank you so much for sharing. That's one way. When we hear from different communities, sometimes we might assume that our community is going through much than the other, regardless where you come from. But everyone got a story. Everyone got a story.
Absolutely.
I really love, especially this field of mental health, encouraging, don't label people without really understanding their stories, because everybody's more than one story. And I am so grateful how all those pieces build us, and with hope we can be able to be whole again and have faith, loving. So thank you. And I want to go to your podcast, Qavah. I hope I'm pronouncing. Oh my God. How do you pronounce that? Because it's a Hebrew word.
Qavah.
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 Okay, so let's draw from the Hebrew word Qavah. Would you please tell our listeners how this concept inspired your podcast and your mission to share stories of hope?
So, actually, the name of it came later. My husband, we would go to an in-house treatment facility, and they would have us tell our stories. And my husband, when he told his stories, all the kids would go to him, and because they related to him. And so he was offering them some hope in their situation because they had tumultuous family lives. So I was like, oh, that's super interesting. And then our congressman passed away, and they didn't have, people told stories for him at his service. And I was like, oh, he was such a great storyteller. I'm sad that I didn't get to hear him tell that story. And someone else told me that they were teaching people in nursing homes how to write their memoirs. I was like, that is fascinating. Ooh. So I had this theme going, and then someone said, have you listened to this podcast? And I was like, what is a podcast? I didn't even know what it was. And so it was the story of someone's life. It was 7 hours long, and I binged it. And I had never binged anything in my life. I was like fascinated, and I was like, I'm going to do this. So I asked people if they wanted to be interviewed, and all these people said yes. And then I was like, what do I do with this? I didn't have a clue what to do. But there was a theme that started coming out through people's stories. Everybody had to wait. Everybody in every story had to wait. And so we were like, okay, that's good. And it was as if in the waiting, things were being worked out. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, that's like a tapestry. And so we're like trying to figure out, what can we name it? And so I was listening to someone speak one time, and they mentioned the word Qavah. And they said, it's the Hebrew word for wait, but it means more than wait. It's like, the Lord is binding things together, and there's trust and hope. And I was like, that's our word. And yes. I like cues, and I think cues are pretty. And so mm-hmm. I'm like, there we go. That's our word. And so I think that, really so much of our life, we have to wait, and we hate to wait.
The way I'm so calling you, girl, but speaking of that, wait. Yes, we do.
it's awful.
Mhm.
It's awful, but we trust that it's going to be okay. And a lot of, in the people that I've interviewed, there have been beautiful things that have come out of just ashes. And I have it, and I really honestly, listening to people's stories, I think about them like they really do give me hope. I've listened to them and I'm doing a podcast, but I'll be like, oh, I remember what John DeFore said.
Yes.
I'm going to read that. That was a good word. And,
Yes.
kind of, they've really impacted me and given me a very rich life, not financially, but, just rich
Mhm.
in my
Yes.
spirit.
Yes.
It's been so wonderful. So that is, I don't know, even know if I answered your question.
You did, and of course, I knew the meaning of it, and I found it so powerful. I wanted you to tell it to our listeners, because the weight and binding things together, that is so
Yes.
powerful.
Yes.
Last night, somebody was asking me, he was like looking for inspiration. He's like, because he was asking me, what are you doing? I'm like, I just finished my meditation work, things like that. Like, how do you find that and all of that? I'm like right now, I feel like God is communicating me the word wait. Because usually I'm a solution oriented person. Every issue, I gotta figure out how to fix it quickly. So
Yeah.
for me, even when I go through tough time, it can be, our brain teaches us how to cope with things. Mine is any tragedy, I have to figure out how to get out before I deal with the emotions. It's like I shut down, deal with things, and come back later. But recently, I've been having many reasons telling me, you're gonna wait. You're not gonna fix this. You're gonna wait. And thank you so much for saying that. And, thinking about Qavah and Beyond the Veil, because even when we started Beyond the Veil, we were inspired by the transition of a butterfly from caterpillar cocoon. There's so much waiting there, and the healing can feel like that. It can feel like nothing is happening, but then in the wait, that hope.
Yes.
I think in the wait, I think it's the hope in there. That's what helps us. Anyhow, we can speak about this forever. I am anything about hope. I always tell people, for me, hope, I think it's a gift for me. I think hope, people do have hope, but I think for me, it's a gift God gave me, because I can be at the lowest of lowest, and I will feel like, even if I'm dead, I'm going to resurrect and come back again. I don't care. So, and I think, thinking about people who are challenged, especially maybe battling things like depression, where you feel like there's no hope, hearing these words like, Qavah, Beyond the Veil, even for Beyond the Veil, there's life after death.
Absolutely.
There's life after death. So, thank you. I'm actually so happy, because I think your podcast, your whole mission, what you communicate, it's something that really is whenever at the center, at the core of the work we are trying to achieve with Beyond the Veil. And I'm so happy that we got to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So let me get back being a host. You have interviewed many people on the Qavah podcast, and I want to ask you, in your experience, how have different cultures expressed hope in times of adversity, and what can we learn from these expressions of hope?
Well, different cultures. So we have had, obviously, you.
Thank you.
Another country who I adore. We've had a lady named Mary who is from Iran, and she was arrested. Her church was persecuted, and she was arrested, and she came to the United States eventually. So she is, anyway, she had an amazing story. we have had guests from who've survived civil war. In El Salvador, we've had guests who've survived other, religious persecution. Mm-hmm. So I think through all the people that, and people who have, have experienced family, mm-hmm. Drug abuse with their parents and removal and all sorts of things. So I think that the theme of hope with all of the people that have experienced different things, and no matter where you're from, mm-hmm. we have to find little glimmers of light out there. And it might be very difficult. In Mary's situation, who was from Iran, they got arrested. She actually, she smuggled Bibles into her country. Wow. And they were about to look in her bag, and there was a call over the intercom that took that person away, and she would have died like right there.
Yes.
But so like seeing people's bravery, and that, like, how can you be that brave? I was scared. I was scared just listening. Mm-hmm. And there was one man named Sammy who they escaped. I can't remember if it was before or after the Iranian revolution, and they went all across the desert, he and his mom and his mm-hmm. and alone, and all of these people who are doing these great yes. brave feats to save their families and save their children, and it's mm-hmm. incredible. And I am an American and I live here, and mm-hmm. people say we're persecuted or whatever. I'm like, okay, would mm-hmm. you like to hear some persecution stories? Because I don't see that. There's like little persecution, and there's mm-hmm. real persecution. And mm-hmm. so I think we are a little spoiled as a culture in what we perceive mm-hmm. to be difficulties even. But I've learned so much, and mm-hmm. and it's interesting to be able to see the world in a perspective that is uniting.
Yes.
And for me, I just think it's so beautiful. And, Sammy, who is from Iran, he has a restaurant and cooks and all of that, and he gives back to the community so much. And like a lot of his generosity is because he was there. Like, he knows what it's like to be hungry. He knows what it's like to be afraid, to not speak mm-hmm. the language, to be in a foreign place and not have anybody. So his heart is bent toward those sojourners, in society that are having difficulties. And so mm-hmm. I think that that's the beauty of hope, in seeing that when we have it, we want to give it.
Yes.
And no matter your culture, no matter where you're from, we just want to offer that to other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even thinking about us sitting together right now.
Right.
Or all the people that, I think your podcast I was looking, it's like close now to 200. Like, it's like, it had plus 100. Yeah. So I'm like, all these people that you had the opportunity to sit with them. If you are listening to this conversation, imagine this woman in Iran at that time trying to, at that moment being traumatized. I might be dead in that moment. And sitting with someone in another country sharing that story, even myself, maybe during genocide, watching my parents being killed, I don't think I would dream of this moment right now. Or even yourself from Tennessee, young girl, I don't think you have dreamed, or one day I'm going to sit with someone from Rwanda or from this country. And I think that is hope. And, I think that's what keep us going, because what we haven't seen, we can't allow the enemy to make us feel like, because we haven't seen it, it's not going to look different and beautiful. So, and I think also the way those stories transform us, me too, when I'm sitting, listening, from people. The other time I was reflecting, because right now I'm practicing as a psychotherapist qualifying. I'm like, I wish I can just stay a client, because now being in the chair, listening from people, there's one thing being a client, there's another thing sitting and listening from other people. And it's one of the transformative way that we can ever imagine. So thank you for sharing those stories with us. And honestly, anyone who want to hear stories of hope, go to that podcast. There's like over 100 podcasts recorded. These are like different people from different communities sharing stories of hope. These are survivors. These are people who went through different things in life. And this is to remind you that you are not alone. In many ways, you can always relate to someone.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, so we keep going, and I know you mentioned this story, but is there a particular story that has transformed you to become who you are today? Can you share with our audience?
Well, I would probably say my husband's story.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Because, you know, we were kids together, and when you're children, you don't have, like, I didn't have a clue. I knew that he had a tumultuous childhood, and I knew, you know, all the things, but obviously his journey has been my journey, in the last 20, I don't know, however many years we've been married, however many decades we've been married. Yes. But it's a lot of walking, alongside, and grace on both parts. You know, my grace for him is grace for me. And because I think for me, because my childhood was very different, it's like, well, we're supposed to do it this way. Like, this is the way you do it. Yes. And he did not have that background at all. So like, he's having to learn with a curve, you know, like there's just a whole lot of space in there of like, that's how you're supposed to do it. And y'all are over there, you know, because when he wasn't with his stepmother, they were alone. I mean, they were literally, like just wild children in, you know, all by themselves. So he really didn't have the interaction, a healthy interaction on a daily basis with a parent ever. So that's very difficult to be married to someone, you know, like me, because I had, you know, two parents that were always there, and we ate dinner at 8:30, and we did all the, you know, beaver cleaver things. And it's meshing very different lives, even though we would appear that we're very similar. Yes. However, we're not similar.
I can relate to your husband.
Yes. It's, so that's, obviously that changed my life, in very good ways. So,
yeah. Thank you so much. It's, just listening to that story. You know, this is one thing. When people ask me, how do you identify, like, how do you describe God for you? I'm like, God is faithful. Because even watching myself as a mother, watching myself through different phases of life, I'm like, how did I even get here? Because, you know, you think you grew up having that guidance. You know, there's a way things are done. I remember the father of my children one time he used to tell me, like, these are how things are done in families. This is how people do things. And for me, that idea was strange. Like, what are you talking about? So it's a blessing how really, and I trust the faithfulness of God in ways that he brings that community around us, show us in a unique way how to go through those things and actually come up with, it can be our own perspective, and also learning from people God put in our lives so we can really access what we missed at the young age. So thank you. We are getting close to the end. I just wanted to ask you, how do you think hope can bridge cultural divides and bring people together, particularly in today's increasingly polarized world?
So, do you know who Timothy Keller is? He's a pastor in New York City, and he wrote a blog post the other day, and he was talking about lemonade on the front porch.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically talking about, this is the first time in American society that God and the church have been considered bad. We have, it used to be like that was all good stuff. And now it's not really considered as favorable. And so as believers, we are to offer lemonade on the front porch, and to kind of be a conduit, from people to God, if you know what I'm saying. And so, because of the stories of people that have been removed, whether by, whatever situation, we started collecting first night bags, and first night bags are, all the things a child would need that first night they're removed. So there's a backpack with underwear, pajamas, soap, toothbrush, blanket.
So when you say children are removed, because thank you for bringing that up. And I remember our podcast coordinator, she was like, we're going to include a question about like first night bags. And I don't know how to forget that. So thank you. Can you please, someone who's listening, when they hear a child was removed, they might not know what that means.
So, so my husband, they went and lived at an orphanage when he was a child. Josh Brewer was in foster care. So he was removed from his family of origin and placed in he was multiple foster families.
Yes.
Josh Kona was removed by CPS. And so these are situations where there's neglect or abuse, where children, where the government comes in and removes the children from the families and places them with someone else. So that is incredibly, incredibly traumatic for the children. And so we are, they have brand new things that are bought just for them, so that they have something to cling to that first night that they are somewhere else. So because of that and the generosity of our community, we are in the process of forming our 501c3 to, it's going to be called Qavah the Storehouse. And
that's beautiful.
So we're going to offer first night bags, a foster closet, and probably mentoring and some other services, food and things for people in.
That's amazing.
So we are so excited about this. We actually just had a big meeting with a lot of with CPS. We have a children's advocacy center here, and CASA, different organizations, about, what we can do to help. And so we are really excited about the future of being able to offer lemonade on the front porch to people in difficult situations. And we gave to the CAC, which is the only children that they interact with are children who have been victims of crimes. Yes. So it comes to the police and so whenever that happens, when there's a crime in the home, you leave everything in the home. And so those first night bags are very necessary for those children, or if they're going to have a medical evaluation, their clothes are gone for the medical evaluation, so they have to have all new things. So, we started first night bags just kind of out of like, oh, let's be nice, but it's like we had no idea the impact that one little thing could have on people. And, children who may have really never had new clothes before, and they had super cute outfits, because it's interesting for me when I shop for it, it's so much fun, because it's like, I get to shop for little people again. And I always get like, okay, my kids would have worn this to school. And so I'm going to buy for what my children would have worn. And so we've really had a wonderful, wonderful time, and are so looking forward to the future of all the things that we hope to be able to do for our community. So because of that. And that's just born out of listening to stories and seeing a need and attempting to meet the need.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Thank you so much. We on our team we have Judith. She's been fostering kids for a while.
okay,
Since she was actually before she got married, when she was a student, and then she got married,
wow.
she kept doing it, and she usually fostered children with special needs. And I used to be in her home all the time, looking how she does things. Because from the young age, I really want to adopt. I was like, even if I can adopt, I want to be able to do that. Because when you're speaking, someone who's familiar, you can understand how is that important. Because she shares with me how that transition happened, how kids can wake up and sleep, end up in another house in the same night, how they look confused, how it takes a lot, their clothes are gone, everything. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful things. So I know you share when you're about to do that. Is that something you do? I know you're gonna do more of that, but usually do you do that once a year, or you do it?
Yes, traditionally we've done it at Christmas time. That's what we've done. And we probably will do a whole lot more of it once we get all situated. So we've just started the process. We got our TIN number. We have to get our approval from the IRS to make sure that they say that we can be a 501c3. But the state has said we're good. And we're just jumping through the hoops right now and trying to figure it out. But we will share once this all comes into fruition, all the things. We really are so excited. It has given us so much joy to be able to do it. My partner, her name's Cheyenne Weeble, and she had 2 biological children and adopted 2 children from Vietnam. And so her heart is for this community, and she loves to shop. We love to shop. So buying things for children is just, we just think that's a lot of fun. So we are excited to be able to give back and to love on some people. And, obviously we will never meet all the people whose lives we have,
Absolutely.
touched. But because we've given, I don't know how many backpacks away, and all over North Texas and Arkansas, because we've gotten so many. Our community has been very, very generous, and I'm so incredibly grateful for that. And so we're excited to see what the future is, and to be able to love on some people that we may never meet.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really, I can speak on that for a long time, because what are you doing for those kids? It is amazing. Even until now, I remember growing up in an orphanage, gifts we used to receive. I have those memories. And something I tell people, one of my dreams is to be able to adopt. And even my kids know that. They're always like, oh, make sure you adopt someone who's either younger than me or older than me, so they can protect me from all this. It's like those conversations. But one thing I know for sure is that children with no families, what they need is actually be able to belong to a family. Sometimes we feel like, we need to give more, but I remember growing up, I didn't need much. It's like you just need that safe home to be, so that you can be from somewhere. So, yeah, thank you. And I have a bonus question. And yeah, if you had 24 hours, like in your 24 hours, if you had 1 extra hour, what would you do with that time?
Today, I would have to say, I would spend it with my kids, because they don't live with me. And I don't get to see them very much. So I miss them terribly. I talk to them all the time. I've talked to them today. But I don't get to be with them. I don't get to hug them and, touch them. Like, I miss them being little people. We got people at home. I know it's hard, but gosh, it goes by fast and then it's gone.
Yes.
So that's, I probably would do that, which sounds a little selfish, but I really, all busy.
Yes.
We're all busy. So if an additional, they'd have to have an additional 24 hours as well. So I'd be like, I'll come to my house and let's just hang out for 24 hours. And we'll just, and there are no calories. So we can eat whatever we want.
Wow, that's really nice. I often tell my kids, oh, when you start college or university, don't go live away. Just stay here. Stay here, save money, do that. Because I'm like, no, I would like to keep a tradition back home where kids can really stay home until they're fully equipped to start life. You know, it's normal in our culture. It's normal in our culture that kids, young adults, even before they get married, they can stay in their parent home until they get married, and it's fine. You know, it's a different culture, but I'm always like, you know, as long as you can have them, it's a blessing.
Yes, I agree. I wish none of my kids are married. They should still be living with me. But my son would not be pleasant. He's too old, so it's okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, and also in your schedule, if you know, let's say 1 hour is removed on your day, what would you remove in your schedule? Let's say you have 24 hours, but they say now it's 23 hours. What can you remove?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I would probably say social media. I don't know that I spend an hour on it, but I do peruse it, and it's probably a waster of my time.
Yes.
So that's probably what I would remove. So I'm sorry. And of course it's necessary. It's like one of the things we have to do. Mm-hmm. We have to do social media because obviously other people, you know, people won't know about us if we don't do social media.
Yes.
But sometimes it's like, oh, I just really don't want to see this. So I'd probably remove that. I'd probably remove that because it feels like it wastes time.
Yeah. Yeah, many guests always say social media, and I think even myself will be that. I think what I usually encourage people, it's like, you know, maybe time to time, 1 week a month, or sometime there, we just disconnect. It's technology, it's a beautiful thing, but also taking away so much of our time. Anyhow, thank you so much. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Lydia. It was an honor. It really was. Thank you for asking me. I have loved the experience, and I think that you're doing amazing things. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. So we will share with our listeners your social media handles, how to find the podcast and yourself. Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder, we have our in-person event on June 10. We called it Isoko 365 Tell Your Story. This is one way to heal from storytelling. And also you are in control of how you tell your story. It's going to be a 1-day retreat, poems, food, connections, conversation, arts. So yes, so actually registration is already open. Please register. We have, you know, a limited capacity, and we'll be so happy. It's going to be in Toronto, and we are so excited to host you on June 10. Thank you, everyone. Wish you a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful rest of month. We're going to be back for the podcast for the month of June. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. That's it for the week. We hope you gathered your dose of resilience for the week ahead. Follow Gem 365 podcast to know when the next episode comes up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. Share with your friends, community, and family, and do not also forget to follow and share feedback or questions on our community organization social media at Beyond the Veil Mission on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Or learn more about our work via our website at www.beyondtheveilmission.com. In the spirit of building resourceful, stronger communities, We can also help your community or business or organization to share your news and event on our podcast. Please email us for collaboration at podcastgen365@gmail.com. Thank you. Bye.